Alright, boys and girls, it's Seth here, probably better known as Saffron Olive. Today we have another edition of Budget Magic, and we are going back to Modern again. Yes, I know we were in Modern last week with Budget Magic, but we are hopping right back into it quicker than usual because this super awesome, super fun, super powerful deck just happened to pop up out of nowhere, and I couldn't resist making these videos. And I have to say, this deck is so sweet. I haven't been this excited for a Budget Magic in a long time. Have some of the most exciting videos, I think, that we've ever had in the Budget Magic series. We, not to spoil it, but we get some turn 2 kills, turn 3 kills, and sometimes even through resistance from our opponent. It is just awesome. Anyway, we are talking about Blistering Rage. Yes, that name is from me, and I don't know if it's a good name or not, but I think it fits the deck fairly well. Anyway, deck is super cheap. I would consider it an ultra budget deck for the Modern format. It comes in at under $8 online, under 58 in paper, which is just the absolute floor for a competitive Modern deck. Anyway, what is this deck doing? Well, we have about 4 parts to this deck. Part 1 is the creatures. We have 3 different creatures, each are 4-ofs in our deck, and each of them gains a special ability when we cast an instant or sorcery spell. So first off, Blister Coil Weird. That is where the blistering part of the name comes from. It is a hybrid, so you can cast it for a blue or a red. In our deck, we always cast it for a red since we are only playing 16 mountains. Anyway, you get a 1/1 that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And it also untaps, which isn't all that relevant, but hey, why not? A little bonus value. We also get Monastery Swiftspear, basically just a better Blister Coil Weird. I think we would definitely play 8 Swiftspears if we could, but since we can't, Blister Coil is close enough. Swiftspear, for 1 red, you get a 1/2, so that's bonus number 1 over Blister Coil. That has haste, bonus number 2, and it also has prowess, so whenever you cast a non-creature spell, which includes instant and sorceries, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Last creature is Kiln Fiend, the Pauper All-Star. Kiln Fiend is a weird card in this deck. It is more expensive. We would like more 1-drops, but it is also more powerful than any creature in our deck. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets +3/+0 until end of turn. So the first time you cast it, it goes up to a 4/2, then a 7/2, then a 10/2, and so on. Its power increases very quickly. So step 1 is to resolve one of these creatures, preferably on turn 1, definitely by turn 2. It is very hard to keep a hand without any creatures. With this deck, you just really need that creature or you will do nothing. So once we resolve a creature, step 2 is to pump that creature's power. The main way we do this is by pump spells. For instance, Titan Strength, which gives a creature +3/+1 until end of turn for 1 red mana, and you also get a scry out of the deal. Brute Force, basically just the red giant growth for 1 red, an instant that gives target creature +3/+3. And then a very important card to this deck, Mutagenic Growth. A green card, but you can cast it for 2 life thanks to the Phyrexian mana, and it gives the creature +2/+2 until end of turn. So a thing to realize is, for instance, with Brute Force, when we cast this, it says +3/+3 is the benefit we gain, but since our creatures get an extra +1/+1, the first Brute Force actually puts a Swiftspear or a Blister Coil up to 5 power, and the second one puts it up to 9 power. So 2 of those, and 9 is actually a very important number in this deck, as you'll see. Step 3 for this deck is to give our creature Double Strike. We have 2 ways of doing this: Assault Strobe, 1 red, sorcery, target creature gains Double Strike until end of turn, and the second part of the deck's name, Temur Battle Rage, 1 in a red for an instant that gives a creature Double Strike, and if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, which we almost always do thanks to our pump spells, the creature also gains Trample until end of turn, which is very relevant as it allows us to get through chump blockers. Speaking of ways to get through chump blockers, we also have 4 copies of Apostle's Blessing. So since we don't have white mana, we have to cast it for 1 and 2 life, which is fine. And we give a creature protection from the color of our choice or artifacts until end of turn. Usually this spell is either a way, like I said, to get through chump blockers. So if our opponent has a young pyromancer and a bunch of tokens, we Apostle's Blessing on red, and we can swing past our opponent's team. It also is a way to protect our creatures from lightning bolts, abrupt decays, dismembers, terminates, any of those cards. It's a way to make sure we keep our small number of creatures, which are very important, alive, because nothing is worse than having a one creature draw, having it immediately dieable, and just doing nothing the rest of the game. Finally, we have a couple of value spells. This is the other kind of part 4 of our deck, is we have 4 Desperate Rituals, which seems like such an odd choice in this deck, but this is where our explosion comes from. Like I mentioned, if you can cast 2 Brute Forces on a Swift Spear, that actually brings Swift Spear up to 9 power. Then, for instance, you cast an Assault Strobe on a Swift Spear, and since Swift Spear gets +1/+1 when we cast Assault Strobe, that puts it up to 10 power, and also gives it double strike. So that is one of the ways that we can win on turn 2. Swift Spear or Blister Coil Weird, double Brute Force, or Titan Strength does the same thing into Assault Strobe. But as you see, that costs 3 mana. So Desperate Ritual lets us get that turn 2 nut draw much more easily. Cast that, double Pump spell, double Strike spell, game over on turn 2. Manamorphose. Manamorphose is another one that looks odd. Basically, it is mana neutral because you can cast it for 1 in a red or a green, although that doesn't apply to our deck. You add 2 more mana to your mana pool, and you draw a card. So it doesn't cost a card, it doesn't cost any mana, and it gives all of our creatures there whenever you cast an instant or sorcery bonus. So that's why it's in the deck. So basically, that's the idea of the deck. We take and resolve a 1-drop or a 2-drop, then we, sometimes with the help of Desperate Ritual, resolve 2 pump spells, along with a double strike spell, and we win the game out of nowhere as quickly as possible. And since all of our pieces are fairly redundant, we actually do this not all that uncommonly. We can be a little bit weak to removal if we don't have, if we have 1 creature hands, like I was saying, or if we don't have good enough protection. But if we are left unpeated, we are probably the fastest deck in Modern. I think we can kill on turn 2 more consistently and more quickly than any other deck in the format. Anyway, the sideboard. Honestly, since this plays a little bit like a combo deck, I haven't brought in too many of these cards. We have 4 Gut Shots and 4 Lightning Bolts, both cheap interaction spells. I haven't really figured out when is the proper time to bring these in. It seems like when I've played against Grixis Delver a lot, that has Pyromancer, has Delver, has Snapcaster, just a ton of targets for Gut Shot and Bolt, and they're pretty impactful targets. But I always feel like when I bring those in, I'm taking out pieces that I need for the combo kill, so it's actually a lot harder to actually win quickly when we sideboard. Anyway, so they're there. Like I said, not exactly sure when we're supposed to bring them in, but they do give us more interaction, and they still add the +1/+1 or +3/+0 bonus to our creatures being instants. 4 copies of Young Pyromancer. This one, I guess the idea kind of is we can be a transformational sideboard in some senses. In theory, we could bring in bolts and gut shots and Young Pyromancer, take out some like the rituals, maybe the Manamorphose, and be sort of a tokeny burn deck built around Young Pyromancer instead of going for this turn 2 kill. Smash to Smithereens, 1 in a red, for an artifact destruction spell that also deals 3 damage to the artifact's controller. One card that you'll see in some of the videos that people bring in against us is Dragon's Claw, which I didn't think would be as much of a problem as it actually is. Them gaining a life every time we cast a red spell, or God forbid they get 2 Dragon's Claws down and they gain 2 life every time we cast a red spell, actually outdoes a lot of our work. So that's one reason to have them there. And I guess Ensnaring Bridge and things like that would also be troubling. And 1 Archron Crusader. I've never actually sideboarded this one in. That's the idea of Blistering Rage. Like I said, I'm super excited for this deck. I had a ton of fun making the videos. I hope you guys enjoy watching them. You get to see some crazy, crazy stuff. And if you got a few bucks to spend, go out and buy this deck. The other cool thing I wanted to mention is this deck is very close to being legal in Pauper. We lose Blister Coil and Monastery Swiftsteer, which are very explosive, but we do have the Kiln Fiend. If you go into blue, you get Nivik Cyclops and We Dragonauts, and then you can play basically the same spell base: common, 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 common. So if you just change out those creatures, you can actually have a deck that is playable and functional in both modern and in Pauper for under 10 bucks online. So definitely something to keep in mind. Anyway, enjoy the videos, and I will see you next time.